Breaking the chains. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Alliance was a marvel of alien architecture, a vast dome stretching half a kilometer across, built from crystalline materials that shimmered with an internal light. The hall could seat representatives from over 300 species, arranged in concentric circles around the central speaking platform. The oldest and most powerful civilizations occupied the innermost rings. Humanity's seat was in the outer rings, where the developing species were placed. Ambassador Elena Reyes stood at the central platform, her posture straight despite the crushing gravity of the Alliance station. 30 years of human membership in the Alliance had culminated in this moment. Her dark eyes swept across the assembly, taking in the diverse forms of the galaxy's dominant species. Some were vaguely humanoid, others utterly alien, crystalline entities, gas-filled sacs, living plant colonies, and things that defied easy classification. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Alliance, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the translator fields. After thorough deliberation, Earth and all human colonies are formally withdrawing from the Alliance, effective immediately. The silence lasted 3 seconds before erupting into a cacophony of translated voices. Nothing like this had happened in the 1,000-year history of the Alliance. Member species occasionally faced expulsion for violations of Alliance law, but none had ever voluntarily departed. The presiding speaker, a towering Varlian with iridescent scales and 4 arms, raised his ceremonial staff. The hall fell silent. Ambassador Reyes, the Varlian's translated voice, had an artificial calm. "This is most irregular. Perhaps your species requires more time to consider the ramifications of such a decision." Elena's expression remained neutral. "Our decision is final. For 3 decades, humans have been treated as second-class members. Our technological innovations are restricted, our expansion limited, and our requests for advancement denied under the guise of developmental guidance. We will forge our own path forward." From the third ring, a Thulvian representative, a being resembling a mass of tentacles supporting a bulbous head with 17 eyes, emitted a series of clicks that translated as condescending laughter. "This is the impatience typical of your kind," the Thulvian said. "Your species barely mastered interstellar travel before joining the Alliance. Without our guidance, you would collapse into chaos and self-destruction within a generation." Commander David Chen, Elena's second, stood at her side. His weathered face and military bearing contrasted with Elena's diplomatic polish. They had anticipated this reaction. "The Alliance has provided benefits," Elena acknowledged, "and we are grateful for the knowledge shared. However, the constant restrictions have become intolerable. The Alliance's guided development protocol has become a chain rather than a support." The Mithrani delegate, one of the few allies humans had found among the older species, rose from the second ring. The avian-like being's feathered crest flattened in concern. "Ambassador, I urge caution." The Mithrani's musical voice was genuinely concerned. "There are dangers in the void between stars that the Alliance protects against, threats that younger species are not prepared to face alone." Elena nodded respectfully to the Mithrani. "We understand the risks and accept them." The presiding speaker extended his upper arms in what his species considered a gesture of finality. "Very well, Ambassador. The Alliance formally acknowledges humanity's withdrawal. Be aware that this decision cannot be easily reversed. Should your species face extinction from your own recklessness, do not expect Alliance intervention." "We will remember your concern," Elena replied with a slight bow. She turned and walked from the platform, Commander Chen at her side. The massive doors of the assembly hall closed behind them with a resonant thud. "That went as expected," Chen said as they strode toward their shuttle. Elena nodded. "They see us as children throwing a tantrum. They cannot comprehend that their protection has become a prison." Their shuttle waited in the massive docking bay of the Alliance station. The station itself orbited a carefully neutral star system, home to no intelligent species. It was a marvel of engineering that housed thousands of diplomats, scientists, and security personnel from across the galaxy. As their shuttle pulled away, Elena gazed at the gleaming structure that had once represented humanity's greatest hope for advancement. How long before they realize what we've done? Chen asked. Years, possibly, Elena replied. Their arrogance blinds them. They truly believe we cannot survive without their guidance. And our preparations? Already underway. Elena smiled slightly. The research teams on Mars, Europa, and Titan began the moment we transmitted our intent to withdraw. Without alliance restrictions, Dr. Kazan believes we can achieve in years what might have taken centuries under their protocols. The shuttle accelerated away from the station, its course set for Earth. Behind them, the Alliance Council was already convening an emergency session to discuss the unexpected human departure. Most representatives predicted humans would return within a decade, humbled and seeking redmission. They were wrong. 5 years passed since humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Alliance. To Alliance observers, human space seemed quiet. Too quiet. Intelligence reports labeled human worlds as regressing and isolationist. These assessments pleased many Alliance members who had predicted humanity's swift decline. The reality was dramatically different. On the research station orbiting Jupiter's moon Europa, Dr. Sofia Kazan stood before a holographic display showing the test results of her team's latest breakthrough. 20 scientists from a dozen Earth nations watched anxiously as she analyzed the data. The phase shift drive works, she announced finally. A cheer erupted around the laboratory. Her chief assistant, Dr. Marcus Wong, stared at the results in astonishment. The Alliance said this technology was at least 5 centuries beyond our capability, he said. Sophia smiled, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. The Alliance says many things, most of them designed to keep developing species dependent on them. The drive they had created could move ships through space faster than anything in Alliance territory. It didn't rely on the standard hyperdrive methods that the Alliance carefully controlled and distributed to member species according to their developmental stage. How soon until we can install it in a ship? Marcus asked. 4 months, Sophia replied. We're already building the prototype. Similar breakthroughs were happening across human space. On Mars, the quantum computing facilities had developed artificial intelligence systems far beyond what the Alliance permitted young species to utilize. On Luna, the Defense Research Division had created weapons systems using principles that Alliance scientists had never considered or had deliberately avoided. Admiral Hiroshi Yamamoto stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform, watching as workers completed the newest generation of sensor arrays. These systems could detect ships at distances that would have seemed impossible during the Alliance era. The final calibrations are complete, Admiral, his second-in-command reported. The defense network now covers Earth and all inner colonies. Hiroshi nodded with satisfaction. And the Alliance observers? Still maintaining position at the edge of our system, the officer replied. They see only what we allow them to see. Hiroshi looked at Earth rotating slowly below the station, blue and white, and achingly beautiful. 5 years ago, we were barely worthy of attention at their meetings. Now we've accomplished more than we did in 3 decades under their guidance. Without the Alliance's restrictive protocols, human innovation had exploded. Ideas that were once forbidden were now explored freely. Scientists and engineers worked without the artificial limitations imposed by species who claimed to know better. At the boundary of human space, an Alliance observation vessel approached cautiously. The ship belonged to the Mithrani, who had always been more sympathetic toward humans than other Alliance species. Their vessel remained outside the boundary line that humans had established after their withdrawal. The Mithrani scientists were puzzled by the readings their sensors collected. Energy signatures unlike anything in Alliance records appeared on their screens. Power levels that should be impossible for a species at humanity's development stage were being detected. Could our instruments be malfunctioning? The ship's captain asked. The chief scientist, a veteran of many exploration missions, shook her head, ruffling her feathers. All readings are verified through multiple systems. The humans are using technology we've never seen before. The Mithrani ship returned to Alliance space with its disturbing data. When presented to the Alliance Science Directorate, the readings were quickly dismissed as sensor errors or deliberate human deception. No species can advance so rapidly, the Thulvian representative stated firmly. Especially not without Alliance guidance. The humans are likely creating false readings to appear more advanced than they are. Only the Mithrani remained concerned. They, alone among Alliance species, remembered their own ancient history, how their ancestors had achieved remarkable technological leaps when facing extinction. Necessity and freedom had driven innovation faster than any carefully managed development program. In a private meeting, the Mithrani ambassador spoke with the presiding speaker. "We should re-establish contact with the humans," the Mithrani urged. "Something unprecedented is happening in their territory." The presiding speaker waved away the concern with his lower arms. Let them play with their crude imitations of real technology. When they face genuine challenges, resource depletion, natural disasters, or worse, they will return to the Alliance. All immature species eventually do. The Mithrani ambassador wasn't convinced. As she left the meeting, she wondered if the Alliance's greatest mistake was treating humans like every other species they had encountered before. Unknown to the Alliance, human ships were already venturing beyond their borders, observing, learning, and preparing for a future where humanity would rejoin the galactic community, but on very different terms than before. Rising from shadows. 8 years after humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Alliance, the political landscape of the galaxy was shifting. Alliance influence had begun to wane in regions distant from the core worlds. Into these power vacuums stepped opportunistic forces, pirates, corporate mercenaries, and expansionist factions from non-Alliance species. In the neutral space between the Alliance and the aggressive Vortak hegemony, a convoy of Riven merchant ships moved cautiously. The Rivens were peaceful traders, their vessels filled with medical supplies and agricultural technology bound for colonies on the frontier. They relied on Alliance protection, but patrols in this region had grown increasingly sparse. Captain Narilla of the lead Riven vessel noticed the danger too late. 7 Vortak warships decloaked and surrounded the convoy. The Vortaks were known for their brutality, operating at the edges of Alliance space and preying on weaker species. "Send a distress signal to the nearest Alliance outpost," Narilla ordered, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with alarm across her blue skin. The signal was transmitted, but the response was disheartening. The nearest Alliance patrol was 5 hours away. The Riven ships formed a defensive circle. Their weapons were minimal, designed only for deterring small-scale threats. Against a Vortak battle group, they stood no chance. "Surrender your vessels and cargo," the Vortak commander's harsh voice came through the communication system. "Your lives may be spared for appropriate compensation." The Rivens knew this was a lie. Vortaks rarely left witnesses who could identify their ships. Captain Narilla was preparing her crew for the inevitable when the ship's sensor operator cried out in surprise. New contacts. Ships appearing at high velocity. On the main view screen, sleek vessels materialized seemingly from nowhere. They moved with impossible speed and precision, surrounding the Vortak warships before they could react. Unidentified vessels, this is Captain Maya Santiago of the Earth vessel Defiant. A calm human voice broadcast across all channels. "The Riven ships are under our protection. Withdraw immediately." The Vortak commander laughed, the sound grating even through the translation systems. "Humans, you left the Alliance. You have no authority here." In response, the human ships fired. Their weapons were unlike anything the Rivens had ever seen. Targeted energy beams disabled the engines of 3 Vortak ships in seconds. The other human vessels moved with incredible maneuverability, avoiding Vortak return fire as if they could predict where the shots would land before they were fired. In less than 4 minutes, all 7 Vortak warships were disabled, their weapons and propulsion systems offline. The Alliance isn't the only power capable of enforcing peace, Captain Santiago stated simply. She then opened a private channel to the Riven ships. "You're safe now. Alliance forces will arrive in a few hours. We would appreciate if you didn't mention our involvement too specifically." Before Captain Narilla could properly thank the humans, their ships accelerated to seemingly impossible speeds and vanished from sensors. When the Alliance patrol finally arrived, they found the disabled Vortac vessels and shaken but unharmed Riven traders. The Rivens told them only that unknown saviors had helped them, but rumors spread quickly. News of the incident reached the Alliance Central Council within days. An emergency session was called to discuss what had happened. "The description of the ships matches no known design," the head of Alliance Security reported. "But the energy signatures detected by the Riven sensors show similarities to unusual readings our observers have detected from human space." The council chamber erupted in concerned discussion. How had humans advanced so quickly? More importantly, why had they intervened when they owed the Alliance nothing? The Fulvian representative pounded a tentacle against the table. "This is unacceptable. The humans are acting beyond their authority. We must send a delegation to remind them of their place." The Mithrani representative trilled in disagreement. "Their place? They left the Alliance precisely because we kept trying to determine their place for them. Perhaps we should consider that they have found it on their own." "I propose immediate reconnaissance of human territory," the Fulvian insisted. "We need to know what other technologies they've developed." Wiser voices urged caution. If they can build ships that outclass our patrols in just 8 years, what else might they have created? Asked an elder Keldari, whose species had once been warriors before joining the Alliance. Confronting them might not be prudent. For the first time in centuries, the Alliance faced a situation their protocols didn't address. A former member species was now operating independently with technology that might rival their own. Some council members feared the implications. Others were curious. A few felt something rarely experienced in Alliance chambers: respect. Meanwhile, the human fleet that had rescued the Rivens returned to their base on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Captain Maya Santiago filed her report simply: "First intervention successful. No casualties. Positive impression established." The quiet expansion of human influence had begun. 10 years after leaving the Alliance, humanity had transformed. The scattered human colonies no longer stood alone. They had formed the Earth Confederation, a flexible alliance of worlds united by shared principles rather than rigid rules. Unlike the hierarchical structure of the Alliance, the Confederation valued diversity of approach and thought. On the frontier world of New Horizon, Governor James Chen looked out over the bustling spaceport. Ships of various designs arrived and departed in carefully choreographed patterns. Some belonged to human colonies. Others came from independent worlds that had established trade agreements with the Confederation. "It's quite a sight," said the visitor standing beside him, her feathered crest rising with interest. Ambassador Kira of the Mithrani had arrived without announcement or official Alliance sanction. Her presence represented an enormous diplomatic risk, both for her and for humanity. 10 years ago, we had only a handful of colony ships, James replied. Now we build vessels that can cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. The Alliance remains in denial, Kira said. Most species still believe you're struggling to survive without their guidance. Others think you've simply isolated yourselves and will eventually collapse. James smiled. And what do the Mithrani believe? That we made a terrible mistake with humanity, Kira answered honestly. We saw only your youth as a spacefaring species. We failed to recognize your potential. They walked toward the government complex, passing through gardens where plants from a dozen worlds grew together. Humans and a few non-Alliance aliens moved about their business, paying little attention to the unusual visitor. The incident with the Rivens has forced some reconsideration in the Council, Kira continued. The presiding speaker has proposed a formal diplomatic mission to re-establish contact with Earth. After 10 years of silence, James raised an eyebrow. What's changed? Fear, Kira replied bluntly. And opportunity. The Vortac incursions grow bolder. Alliance defenses are stretched thin. Some believe humans might be persuaded to assist, in exchange for recognition of your independence and technological achievements. In the central chamber of the government building, they were joined by Admiral Elena Reyes, the same woman who, a decade earlier, had delivered humanity's withdrawal from the Alliance. Her hair had grayed, but her eyes remained sharp and determined. Ambassador Kira, Elena greeted the Mithrani with a respectful bow. Your visit honors us, though I suspect the Alliance would not approve. The Alliance doesn't know I'm here, Kira confirmed. This is unofficial. Elena gestured toward seats arranged around a circular table. Then let us speak unofficially about the future. As they talked, holographic displays showed the current political situation in nearby sectors. The Alliance was facing challenges on multiple fronts, not just from the Vortac, but from internal dissent as well. Several younger species had begun questioning the guided development protocol after witnessing humanity's rapid advancement. The Alliance is at a crossroads, Kira explained. The old ways no longer seem sufficient. Your withdrawal forced questions that have been avoided for centuries. Elena studied the Mithrani carefully. And what does Kira of the Mithrani propose? Not the ambassador, but you personally. Kira's feathers rippled, a sign of deep emotion among her kind. A new beginning. Not humanity's return to the Alliance as it exists now, but a transformation of the Alliance itself. One where species are truly partners rather than arranged in hierarchies of age and perceived wisdom. James exchanged glances with Elena. This was more than they had hoped for when they had allowed the Mithrani ship to approach New Horizon. The Alliance would never accept such changes easily, Elena said. No, Kira agreed. But necessity is a powerful motivator. The Vortac threat grows. Other, worse dangers lurk in the darkness between galaxies. Threats the Alliance has kept secret from younger species. Which is why we left, Elena said softly. Not just because of the restrictions, but because of the deception. How can we prepare for threats we aren't allowed to know exist? The discussion continued for hours, covering possibilities that would have seemed unthinkable a decade earlier. When it concluded, nothing was formally decided, but understanding had been reached. 2 months later, a formal Alliance diplomatic vessel approached the edge of Earth's solar system. It requested permission to enter human space, a courtesy never extended during humanity's time as an Alliance member. On Earth, in the rebuilt United Nations complex in Geneva, the Confederation Council debated how to respond. The chamber was filled with representatives from every human colony and settlement. Admiral Reyes, now Secretary of Interstellar Relations, addressed the assembly. 10 years ago, we chose independence because the Alliance offered us no real voice, she said. Now they come as supplicants, seeking our help against the Vortac. The question before us is not whether to rejoin the Alliance. That system no longer serves our interests. The question is, can we transform the Alliance into something better? A true community of equals. The debate was passionate but brief. Humanity had not turned its back on the galaxy, only on the systems that sought to constrain human potential. The vote was nearly unanimous. When the Alliance delegation was finally permitted to land in Geneva, they were surprised by what they found. Earth was not the struggling, isolated world they had expected. It was the center of a vibrant, expanding civilization that had leaped centuries ahead in development. The presiding speaker, still the same Varlian who had dismissed humanity's withdrawal a decade earlier, found himself addressing the Confederation Council as an equal, not a superior. His prepared speech about welcoming humans back to the Alliance died unsaid as the reality of the situation became clear. We appear to have misunderstood each other, he said instead, with rare humility. Secretary Reyes, seated across from him, nodded. Yes, we did. But perhaps now we can begin to understand one another properly. The negotiations that followed would reshape the politics of the galaxy. The Alliance would not remain as it was, nor would humanity simply return to the fold. Instead, something new would emerge. A galactic concord where knowledge flowed freely, and each species contributed according to their unique strengths and perspectives. As the agreements took shape, A Thulvian observer commented acidly to a colleague. When humanity left the Alliance, we thought it merely an annoyance. We never imagined they would return and transform us. In the vastness of space, the stars themselves seemed to watch with interest as the balance of power shifted. Humanity had broken its chains and, in doing so, offered a new kind of freedom to all.